This episode contains mature themes. AI technology is used to enhance the listening experience. Listener discretion is advised. The desert night was still when the first lantern flickered to life inside the tomb. Dust swirled through the stale air, coating the walls that had not felt human breath in more than 3,000 years. Faded gods glared from the shadows as the men stepped deeper, their light glinting off gold and death. Somewhere beyond, a door had been sealed with a warning in ancient hieroglyphs, a promise that those who disturbed the pharaoh's rest would meet a swift and certain end. Within months, the prophecy began to unfold. Some say it was coincidence, others say it was the curse, but the desert remembers the truth. Welcome to Three Theories, the podcast where we uncover the great mysteries of the world. I'm Elena Hart, your guide on this journey through the unknown. Each episode will examine unsolved cases, paranormal phenomena, and historical and natural mysteries, and explore three compelling theories to help you decide, what do you believe? In November of 1922, the Valley of the Kings lay silent beneath the weight of centuries. The Egyptian sun burned over the desolate cliffs, where wind and sand had buried the secrets of pharaohs for millennia. For weeks, archaeologist Howard Carter had been digging in near hopelessness. Another season of disappointment loomed. His wealthy patron, Lord Carnarvon, had already poured a fortune into the search, and patience was running thin. Carter knew this might be his final chance. Then, on the morning of November 4th, fate intervened. A young water boy, leading his donkey across the dig site, stumbled on a flat stone edge, a step carved deep into the rock. Beneath layers of rubble and centuries of shifting sand lay something astonishing. A sealed doorway, its plaster still intact, stamped with royal insignia. Carter brushed away the dust and read the cartouche that stopped his breath. The name of a forgotten boy king, Tutankhamen. When Carter first pressed his eye to the small hole in the sealed doorway, a breath of air, ancient and dry, brushed against his face. It carried the faint scent of dust and resin, the perfume of ages long buried. His flickering lantern cast a trembling glow into the darkness, and for a moment, the chamber seemed to breathe. Out of the shadows emerged glimmers of gold, the curve of a chariot wheel, the serene face of a gilded statue, the coiled shimmer of a royal cobra worked into a staff. Every surface seemed alive with color and light, as if the sun itself had been trapped within those walls for 3,000 years. The walls were crowded with treasures piled high and chaotic, yet untouched, as though the boy king had just laid them there. Silence pressed in, heavy, sacred, and Carter knew he was standing at the threshold of eternity. Over the next several months, the excavation moved painstakingly forward under the weight of secrecy and anticipation. Each day brought Carter closer to history, closer to the moment that would etch his name into legend, and perhaps something else entirely. Finally, on February 16th, 1923, he breached the burial chamber. When he lifted his lantern through the small opening and peered inside, he later wrote, "At first I could see nothing. Then, as my eyes grew accustomed to the light, details emerged slowly from the mist. Strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere the glint of gold." He was asked if he could see anything. His reply became immortal. Yes, wonderful things. But among the treasures, there was something more ominous, a warning etched above the entrance. When translated, it read, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." Carter laughed it off. "Ancient superstition," he said. Yet even as he dismissed the words, a chill settled over the camp, the kind that seeps into the bones and refuses to leave. Weeks later, Lord Carnarvon, the man who had financed the discovery, was bitten by a mosquito on his cheek. The wound became infected after a shaving cut reopened it. Within days, he was delirious with fever. On April 5th, 1923, just 2 months after entering the tomb, Lord Carnarvon was dead. And then came the stories. At the exact hour of his death, the lights in Cairo flickered and went dark. Back in England, his beloved dog Susie howled once, then fell lifeless to the floor. The newspapers couldn't print fast enough. Headlines screamed of a pharaoh's curse. More deaths followed. George J. Gould, a wealthy visitor who had toured the tomb, died suddenly of pneumonia the next day. Prince Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey, an Egyptian noble connected to the excavation's social circle, was shot dead by his wife. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who x-rayed the mummy, also died unexpectedly. By 1929, at least a dozen deaths had been linked to the tomb. Some were natural, some violent, and others simply unexplained. Then came the details too strange to ignore. The cobra, symbol of Egyptian royalty, that slipped into Carter's home, killing his pet canary the very day the tomb was opened. The sudden illnesses, the quiet accidents that left no reason, only whispers. The workers who swore they heard footsteps echo from inside the sealed chamber long after it was empty. Howard Carter himself never spoke of curses. Outwardly, he remained calm, dismissive even. But those close to him said that in his final years, he avoided the valley altogether. He died of lymphoma in 1939, 16 years after the tomb's discovery. And yet, the legend didn't die with him. To this day, many still wonder if the boy king's warning was not superstition, but promise. A vow that even in death, Tutankhamen would protect his rest. Was it coincidence? Or had something ancient awakened beneath the desert, waiting all those centuries for the first trespasser to break the seal? For decades, skeptics have argued that there was never anything supernatural about the so-called curse. Only science, circumstance, and a touch of sensational journalism. According to this theory, the deaths linked to Tutankhamun's tomb can be explained by something far more tangible than vengeful gods: the deadly microbes and toxins that lay dormant within the sealed chambers of the dead. When Howard Carter broke through the outer doorway in 1922, he released air that had been trapped for more than 3,000 years. It was thick with decay, mold, and organic dust from linen, oils, and desiccated remains. The scent of age and rot clung to every surface. The men described the air as heavy, difficult to breathe, a stagnant, suffocating presence that seemed to cling to their throats and eyes. Even a single breath could have carried invisible dangers. Spores or bacteria dormant since the Bronze Age, suddenly given new life. Scientists today know that certain fungi, like Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus niger, can produce lethal mycotoxins when inhaled, especially in enclosed, humid spaces. Others point to ancient bacteria, such as Pseudomonas or Streptococcus, both capable of causing deadly infections when they enter the bloodstream. The symptoms many victims displayed, fever, infection, pneumonia, blood poisoning, all fit neatly within a medical explanation. Lord Carnarvon's death, for example, might have stemmed from a simple bacterial infection that turned septic in an era before antibiotics. Some researchers even suggest that Carnarvon's weakened immune system from prior illnesses made him especially vulnerable. Similarly, George J. Gould's pneumonia and the mysterious fevers that afflicted others could have been caused by airborne pathogens released during the excavation. In the weeks after the tomb was opened, several team members reportedly developed persistent coughs and fatigue, nothing fatal, but unsettling enough to feed the rumor mill. In the 1960s, microbiologists tested samples taken from other Egyptian tombs and found spores capable of surviving thousands of years in sealed environments, proof that such organisms could, in theory, remain active long enough to infect modern explorers. To those seeking a rational explanation, this is the curse demystified. Not divine retribution, but an invisible biological weapon of time. Even the hieroglyphic warning, "Death shall come on swift wings," might have been nothing more than poetic coincidence, its promise fulfilled by nature, not by gods. Still, there are problems with this theory. Howard Carter himself, the man who spent years inside the tomb, handling artifacts and breathing its ancient air, lived well into old age. Many members of his excavation team also survived long after, dying of ordinary causes. If deadly spores were to blame, why were they so selective? Why did the supposed curse strike high-profile figures while leaving countless Egyptian workers untouched? Some argue it was luck, or perhaps coincidence magnified by hysteria. Others suggest that once the world believed in the curse, it gave every death a sinister narrative. Fear itself became infectious. And yet, even logic couldn't silence the whispers that followed. Because if the curse was nothing more than science and superstition, why did the deaths keep happening long after the tomb was emptied and sealed away once more? What if the curse wasn't ancient at all? What if it wasn't written in hieroglyphs or spoken by long-dead priests, but invented, quietly, by the living? According to this theory, the so-called curse of the Pharaoh wasn't divine retribution, but deliberate deception. A story crafted by Howard Carter, Lord Carnarvon, or their associates to keep intruders, rivals, and looters far away from Tutankhamun's tomb. In 1922, the Valley of the Kings was a battlefield of ambition. Archaeologists from across Europe were competing fiercely for discoveries, each racing to uncover the next royal burial. Rumors of theft, bribery, and sabotage were common. Egypt was also in the midst of political upheaval. Nationalist movements were challenging British colonial control, and resentment toward foreign excavators was growing. With the world's eyes on Carter's find, a tomb untouched and filled with unimaginable treasures, the team faced an immediate problem: how to protect it. Security in the desert was limited. The tomb lay in an isolated valley, miles from official oversight, guarded by only a handful of workers and police. Carter knew that once word spread of what he'd found, there would be no shortage of hands eager to pry open its doors. Artifacts stolen from other sites had already appeared in European markets. A myth, whispered in the right circles, could do what guards could not: inspire fear. the story of the curse began spreading almost as soon as Lord Carnarvon died. Newspapers printed sensational headlines about Pharaoh's revenge and the death that walks by night. Within days, the idea had captured the world's imagination. But some historians believe Carter himself did little to stop it, and may have even encouraged it. He was a private man, wary of journalists and territorial about his find. When reporters pressed for access, he limited their entry, allowing only selected individuals to view the tomb. Carnarvon, meanwhile, had sold exclusive rights to the Times of London, creating resentment among other media outlets. A well-timed whisper about a deadly curse might not only satisfy the public's appetite for mystery, it could also keep unwanted visitors, both human and official, from interfering. After Carnarvon's death, the British press published increasingly lurid details: strange illnesses, mysterious lights, and eerie coincidences. Some claimed Carter's canary had been killed by a cobra. Others insisted every light in Cairo flickered at the moment of Carnarvon's death. Many of these details were never verified, but they spread quickly. And Carter, ever the pragmatist, never publicly denied them. To his critics, that silence was strategic. Every headline about the curse reinforced his control over the site. The myth created a natural barrier, one stronger than any fence. Even Egyptian workers who feared divine retribution kept their distance. If the world wanted a ghost story, Carter was willing to let them have one. But there's a darker interpretation too. Some suggest that Carter may have grown to believe in the curse he allowed to flourish. That years of isolation in the valley, surrounded by death and superstition, took their toll. Colleagues later described him as increasingly withdrawn, burdened, even haunted. He never spoke publicly about the curse, but in his private notes, there are odd references to bad air, omens, and the weight of the tomb. Perhaps the story had become too real, even for him. If the curse was truly man-made, a myth built to protect treasure and reputation, then it worked better than anyone could have imagined. The world still fears it a century later. And yet, even the cleverest trick has limits. Because not everyone who suffered the curse ever saw the tomb. Some never set foot in Egypt. So if the curse was just a story, who or what was still writing it? To believers in the supernatural, there is no question. The curse was real. Ancient Egyptians believed deeply in the sanctity of burial, and Tutankhamun's tomb was designed to seal his spirit for eternity. Disturbing it was not just theft, it was desecration. The ancient Egyptians believed that the boundary between life and death was fragile, and that the spirits of the dead could act upon the living. The tombs of the pharaohs weren't just graves, they were fortified sanctuaries, guarded by magic, spells, and sacred symbols meant to protect the body from disturbance. Hieroglyphic warnings carved in stone weren't decoration, they were threats. The message above Tutankhamun's tomb, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king," was one of many believed to carry real power. And for some, the events that followed were too precise to be coincidence. When Lord Carnarvon died, It was said that all the lights in Cairo went out. His dog, thousands of miles away in England, howled once and dropped dead at the exact same moment. At the time of his death, the wound from his mosquito bite lay directly over the same spot on Tutankhamun's cheek. Days later, his daughter reported hearing her father's voice calling her name in the night. George J. Gould's sudden illness after visiting the tomb, Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who x-rayed the mummy, dead shortly after. Arthur Mace, one of Carter's closest associates, gone from arsenical pneumonia within the year. The pattern was too consistent. All had entered the tomb. All had touched what should have been left alone. Even those who mocked the idea weren't untouched. Evelyn White, another archaeologist connected to the excavation, was found dead in 1924, hanging from a rope, an apparent suicide. In his final note, he wrote, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear." The deaths seemed to follow anyone who disturbed the tomb or handled its artifacts. Museum curators, financiers, researchers, many fell ill. Some died in bizarre or violent ways. There were whispers that artifacts removed from the tomb carried the curse with them. In the decades that followed, reports surfaced of museum guards collapsing without cause, strange shadows seen near display cases, and objects shifting in their glass enclosures. Some Egyptologists believe the curse may have been more than superstition, that ancient priests may have invoked genuine rituals, placing spiritual traps around the tombs to ensure eternal protection. The Egyptians were masters of ritual magic, blending religion and science so seamlessly that even modern researchers can't always tell where one ends and the other begins. They spoke of Heka, a divine force that animated the words of their spells. When written or spoken in the right way, it was believed to act across time. If Tutankhamun's priests truly performed such rites, the curse could have been more than symbolic. It could have been an enduring command, one that awakened when the tomb was breached. Even now, some visitors to Tutankhamun's relics claim to feel it. Reports of dizziness, fainting, and sudden illness are common in museums that house the artifacts. Staff speak quietly about the strange unease that settles over the room after dark when the tourists are gone and the mummy rests under glass. Howard Carter never admitted belief in the curse, but in his private journals, a few lines stand out. In one entry, he describes hearing a faint rustling sound from inside the sealed burial chamber. In another, he writes of an invisible presence that seemed to linger around the antechamber after dark. He dismissed them as tricks of exhaustion, but others weren't so sure. Because the ancient Egyptians didn't believe death was the end, they believed it was a continuation, and if their magic was meant to protect the pharaoh for eternity, then perhaps it never stopped. Maybe the curse wasn't meant for them. Maybe it was meant for us, for anyone who still can't resist prying open the door between the living and the dead. Thank you for joining us on this episode of 3 Theories. The curse of Tutankhamun's tomb remains one of history's most haunting legends. Were the deaths of those who entered the tomb mere coincidence, the result of infection, bad luck, and fear? Was the curse a convenient myth to protect treasure and reputation? Or did the young pharaoh's spirit truly awaken to punish those who defied him? What do you believe? Visit threetheoriespodcast.com for resources, documents, and additional reading to help you form your own conclusions. Share your thoughts with us on social media and join the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Join us next time as we investigate another haunting case and present 3 more theories for you to consider. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.